Hello everyone and welcome to another tutorial session here on Ghost Paper. And for today's video, we're going to be creating this really cool Fire Typography Effect entirely done in Procreate with brushes, effects, plus a few texture layers. They are going to take it to the next level. So if you're ready to begin, grab your iPad, your Apple Pencil, a drink to stay hydrated, and let's get started. Alright, so let's get started. We're gonna start by tapping on the little plus icon here and creating a screen size canvas to your iPad size. Now, I'm just gonna pull this back a little bit, and the first thing that we're going to do is to fill this first layer with a pure black value. So I'm just gonna make sure that I'm sitting on my brightness 0, saturation 0 as well. And I'm gonna tap on this layer, layer 1. We're going to tap it once and select the option Fill Layer. So now we're going to create a new layer that sits right on top of that dark black layer. And we're going to select both layers by dragging to the left, that bottom layer, and we're going to tap on Group. This step is going to be really important. So just trust me on this one. It doesn't seem like we're going to be using now, but we will at the very end of this tutorial. So now here on our second layer, we're gonna change the color to pretty much a pure white color, 100% brightness with 0% saturation pretty much. And next thing that we're gonna do is go into the Actions menu. We're gonna tap on Add, and we're going to add text. So right here, I'm just gonna rest my pen onto the table here because I actually want to have the keyboard and the fonts and everything showing here. In terms of the font that we'll be using, I'm going to be using for this tutorial the ANA 01, and we're going to go with bold, the boldest option. Now right here, I'm going to double tap, and I'm also going to tap on caps lock, and we're going to write the word fire. Now that we have this here, I'm just going to scale this up, and I'm probably going to make this bigger. I'm going to go into snapping, and I'm going to turn on magnetics, and I just want to make sure that that this is going to be as centered as possible. So let's just make it a little bit bigger, and it's a little hard for me to see because I'm not necessarily I'm like in a bit of an angle as I have to draw this so that the camera can have all the space to film it. But I can see that I need to push this up a little bit. So I'm just going to turn off snapping, just keep the magnetics and bring this up to a place where I think optically feels like it's as centered as possible. Maybe just like a little bit down. Okay. So now that we have this word here, I might just give it a little edit one last time. And again, I'm going to select everything, go back into my font, and let's just see what happens with the kerning. I feel like they were very close to each other. So maybe we give it a little bit of space, perhaps like about 7.5, 7.6 or so. Okay. Now that we have this, this is going to be our base, okay? So for that, I'm even going to change the color. So I should be able to, I thought that we could just change the color by here we go. I'm just going to change the color to a more of a red color because this is going to be our base layer. Slide to the left, and I'm going to hit duplicate. And now we're going to be separating these letters one by one. So I'm just going to change this to another color. So for now, let's just make it blue, and I'm going to rasterize. So now the blue has been rasterized, which means that I cannot edit as a text layer. I can't change the wording. I can't change the kerning anymore. And the reason why is because we're going to be using your selection tool, and we're going to be making selections here. So pretty much close this selection, use 3 fingers on the canvas, and select cut and paste. So we've now remove the F letter into a new layer, as you can see here. We go back into our blue duplicate, selection tool, make another selection, 3-finger swipe, cut and paste. We've separated the letter I. Go into the RE, selection layer, select the letter R, 3-finger swipe, cut and paste. And now we have our 4 letters separated into different layers. Now we'll go back to the letter F. I'm going to be using our adjustments layer, and on hue, saturation, and brightness, I'm just going to push brightness to max, saturation to none. I'm going to go to the letter I, do the same thing, brightness max, saturation none, letter R, back into effects, hue and saturation, brightness max, saturation none, and finally on letter E, go back here, hue, brightness, saturation, brightness max, saturation none. So this was the end pretty much of the setup of our letters. We have our 4 letters separated into layers, and now this backup layer per se, the one that was in red, we're just going to turn it off. We're just going to leave it off for now, because instead of deleting it for now, we don't necessarily need to delete it. It's good to keep backups of our layers in Procreate whenever we can. So with this done, we're going to tap on our first letter. We're going to be working letter by letter onto the next step, which is to create the shapes that are going to be sort of creating the flames for this exercise. Okay, so we're going to, as I've mentioned, select that first layer, slide to the left. We're going to duplicate, and now on the bottom layer, we're going to tap on adjustments, and we actually want motion blur. So now I'm going to be using my own pencil here to kind of give it the direction that we want and the intensity that we want. And I'm going to choose, at 100% here, something pretty much like as much as I can on a diagonal, sort of like this one. I'm going to tap OK, or the arrow key to commit that effect. And I'm going to use that layer that I'm going to slide to the left, duplicate, and duplicate again. So basically, I'm just trying to make that effect a little easier to see, especially on the camera. It picks up really well. On my iPad, it's not as bright. And now with those 3 layers, I'm going to select them all. And I'm going to pinch with 2 fingers here. I'm going to merge them into one thing. So now that I've merged it, I'm going to duplicate again, just trying to make my life a little bit easier here. I'm going to duplicate 2 more times, and I think that's about as much as we want. So it's almost like that I've duplicated 6 times, but I've duplicated 3, merged, and now I'm duplicating 3 again and merging 1 last time. So now we have our letter with some really nice motion blur, and we also have some gradation from white to gray values to dark values and so on and so forth. Okay, so the next step right now is that we are going to start positioning. Now that we have our shape and it's really well defined with the shadings, the whites, the darks, we're going to use the move tool, and we're going to position our F letter at the top left at the F that we want. And I'm just going to commit to that. And now I'm going to use our effects here. And I'm going to use some liquify, some good old liquify. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. And using the push control with size of 65 and a pressure of 100%, we are going to give some really interesting shape to this. Now, I think what's interesting is to play with this idea of curves. So one piece is doing like a really nice kind of like a wavy effect, and you can taper and expand pieces as you feel as you feel like it. Okay, so that's about it for this letter. And now let's do the same with the letter I. We're going to duplicate letter I, hit duplicate, select the bottom version. We're going to go into effects and use our motion blur once again. I'm gonna bring it super strong. Sorry, my pencil just kind of slid off the canvas here. Really hard to see on my screen, so I'm just gonna commit. And I'm going to duplicate 3 times, pinch those 3 layers, duplicate 3 more times, pinch once again. Now we do have this shape. Letter I doesn't have like a lot of visual interest, and that is because there isn't a lot of cuts within the letter itself, so it kind of became a bit of a block. So I wonder, it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to look like once we start doing our effect. But I'm just going to move this down, and using the effectors, we're just going to apply some liquify as well. Something really cool, perhaps like this, kind of like getting some wave, but maybe this one is a bit of a thinner shape at the beginning in contrast to the first letter, and then it can also expand like so. Something kind of cool. So we got this, and now let's go back into our layers panel, do the same thing with letter R, slide to the left, duplicate, bottom version, effects and adjustments, we go into motion blur. Same thing once again, lots of trail. Let's try a nice diagonal, 100%, commit to that. Go into the layers panel, slide left, 3 copies, merge and pinch and merge, 3 more copies, pinch and merge. Move our element down. This one has some really nice breakups and shapes to play with. The letter R is a really interesting one. You could even do this whole tutorial with just one letter if you prefer to, but I'm just using this word to be a bit more dramatic. We go back into adjustments, liquify, and this one there is a lot of information, a lot of good information for us to play with. I'm just going to be having some fun here for a little bit. So maybe this one is going to have like a really nice curve, like so. And something like this. And finally, we got one more letter. Actually, I do see like something kind of peeking out here on letter R. So I'm just going to bring it in. So yeah, part of the magic of this effect is try to make sure that your pulled out layers are kind of fitting within the top letters. Otherwise, it starts to come out and sort of pop out, and it might not look as good. So we just have one more letter to go, letter E. Going to be duplicating that using, as always, the bottom version. In the adjustments, we're going to throw some motion blur. Lots of motion. This one I'm going to tilt perhaps a little bit more to the outside because we have all these letters preceding to it. They're already on a diagonal. Go into the layers panel. We're going to make 3 copies as usual. I'm going to merge them. Make another 3 copies. Merge. Finally, we're moving our composition down to about this much, making sure it's always aligned with our top letter. Letter E also has some really interesting things going on here. So in our liquify, let's try to make use of that. I want to be very careful. I'm just realizing that this letter is touching both corners of the canvas. So I'm not going to be playing too much with this part of the flame because I'm going to have trouble. I'm going to have to be always conscious in pulling this out of the frame because otherwise I'll just show you. If I do anything like this, you start seeing that it's pulling in a weird way. It's showing some repetition of pixels. So always be careful and play in the best way that you can with the dimensions of your canvas. So now we have everything. This is the setup part 2 finished. we have our top letters and we have our flame letters sitting underneath our letters, and everything is within a group, including our background. And this is why this is going to be very, very important for the next step, which is going to be all about effects and making the magic. So let's get started. So first and foremost, I'm going to rename our group to backup or source materials, whatever you prefer. Now we're going to slide to the left and hit duplicate. We're going to turn off our backup or source materials. We really don't need that. And I'm going to tap and select flatten. The thing is, for the effect that we're about to create here in Procreate, at least we're doing this tutorial for Procreate, I can only make this happen when everything is flattened out into one single layer, including even the background. So now that we have everything like this, we're going to go into the adjustments and we're going to go into the magic of gradient mapping. Now, I had prepared this before. I know this looks crazy, like I just did some magic right here in 2 seconds, but I'm going to recreate what I just did right here. So yours on your side is probably going to look like maybe perhaps like this one or even this one. And that's because Procreate comes with a few pre-made recipes for gradient maps. And some of those are actually pretty cool. For example, this one, you're actually making some really, fire magic over here. So what we're going to do is that I'm going to hit that plus button. We're going to create this together. Okay, so our very first layer, I'm going to leave it at white right now because even I need to remember how that's going to really pan out. And our first ever color is going to be a pure yellow. We're going to make another one and we'll space them out after. We're going to bring it to the oranges like so. And what I was doing over here, I was just trying to find the purest value of that orange, the brightest and most saturated shade of that color. And just by adding these 2 colors right here, it kind of already looks like fire, but we're going to be adding more, and those are going to be those like last few tones. And those are going to be the red section right here. Let's find like a really nice punchy red. And I believe that is it, because I'll show you why. Now, this is also really interesting. You know how I was just talking about the spacing? I'm realizing that too much space is actually bad. You have to play with the values that you get from your image. And if I start dragging them to the left, they start to get blown out really, really fast. So in fact, you actually want them closer to the white values, the darker tones closer to the white values, because that helps to create a more believable effect. The only thing that I'm not loving at the moment is the trail on the R. I'm realizing how sharp this inside is, so we're going to be fixing that in a second. But what I wanted to show is that if I go into the black value, and if I change this to any color, it's going to change the whole tonality, the whole shade of black. So it's going to be really important to keep this as a full black tone. We're going to hit done, and we basically have the magic of our gradient map, basically treating the image through its values of the brightest value to the darkest value. So now we're just going to tap the arrow key or the arrow icon to commit to these changes, and back into the layers panel, just making sure, of course, we have that one selected. I am going to smudge this. So let me just make sure that I have, we could actually go into the airbrushing, I believe. Let's try to find, oh, actually we do have the soft brush right here. Let's go with the soft brush, making sure it's not like too big of a brush. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Oh, I totally forgot that this is all in one layer, so I can't see. That's the thing. I'm just going to be a bit careful, see what the results are. I might have to just, this is like smudging in a really weird way. but maybe if I just go like this with more defined brush strokes, I can kind of get something. I think this at least helped a bit. And I can always go back a step. And before these letters were merged, I could do that. So the bottom of the R got a little lost here. So maybe I'll just leave it as that for now. So something like this. Okay. Now the final really step that we have to do here is to add layers and textures that can really make this an even more convincing image. Because, we have this word, it looks like, it says fire, and I think perhaps using grains, textures, things to really bring some qualities to the image are going to make it really interesting. So we're going to jump into the very last step where we're going to be adding some of that. And then I'm going to go through the process of explaining what layers did I add, because I feel for this last step is going to be easier if we kind of work backwards instead of me just adding layers and spending time here trying to find a really nice effect. Ta-da! All right, for the last step, let me show you how it was done. I just basically got a collection of images from Unsplash, and I've added the following layers plus textures. I'm just going to turn everything off here. At the very beginning, I've added just a nice sort of wall texture layer at screen blending mode at about 38%. That's just giving some character to this image. Next, this is a layer I've done myself. It is literally a soft brush with full black color. And what I did, I just painted an ellipse around the image, an ellipse like so, with a very soft brush and kind of medium sized. And then I went into adjustments and I blurred even more with Gaussian blur. In other words, I created a vignette around the image, making sure that the edges are darker than the center of the image. Next up, I added some very nice embers from Unsplash, and I set them as screen mode at 100% opacity. I've also scaled things up a little bit too. And finally, I've added some extra effects, kind of bokeh effects happening on the left side over here. Another image that's set as a screen mode at 100%. So you see at the very end, it's all about giving that final sauce to your image, giving that like little bit, a bit more drama to your statement, to the image that you're trying to create. Just as a final thing, I'm going to select here this layer one. I'm going to go into the adjustments layer and let's try some bloom. And let's just see how much of that really is going to make things special here. So let's just say that we stop at 9%. Right now it is super strong. So I want to play my transition. I'm going to keep it at max, but I think it's on the size and the burn that's going a little too strong. I'm going to decrease the size to about 20%. This is actually at 30 right now. I'm trying to see, because this tool is really, really interesting how you basically have so many sliders to get there. And you definitely don't want to overdo things here. Okay. So now I'm just going to tap and hit preview here just to see how much I'm really working, how much I'm really adding to this image. It's actually just a little bit. I also have another idea. So I'm just going to keep this to max, 47%, 10%, and 50% on the bloom. I'm going to commit this change. And lastly, I'm just going to duplicate our base layer, set it to screen mode, And let's just blur this with some Gaussian blur. Let's just see what happens. So it's kind of like, it's a simpler version of a bloom. So if I tame down the opacity back to 45 or so, I added a little bit more glow into the image. And I'd say that's an optional step. Other things that I haven't done here, to be honest, I haven't added any grain, which I think it could be really, really cool to play with, to be honest, at the very end, to do like a very nice textural image. But this is the tutorial right here. I hope that is short enough that you can follow it step by step, that you can divide it into these chunks of setting up the file, setting up part 2, understanding why we're setting up things this way, coloring the image, and finally adding all the magic to bring things together. So that's it for this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, a like would be super appreciated, as well as make sure to hit the subscribe button for more tutorials to always make you a better digital illustrator that's on the go with an iPad and Procreate. Now on the right side of the screen, there's always more content for you guys to watch. One's my latest upload, and the other one's a video that YouTube thinks you should check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.